Well, good morning, everyone. I am Don Zavis, one of the co-founders of the Tucson Paranormal Society. We want to welcome you to the Inside Tucson Paranormal Conference call that we have. Everything about the paranormal world of Tucson, and we appreciate you being here. As I mentioned in the pre-show, that the commitment that you're making for your interest and investigation in the paranormal and world in Tucson, we greatly appreciate it. We're going to do everything we can to be right there along with you. One housekeeping question: if you're joining us, please cut off your microphone. And the reason I say that is we've got kind of a universal mute, but when we do that, it gets a little bit of a static in the line. So I appreciate you doing that. Obviously, Katta, you and I are going to be the speakers for today. We have a wonderful, wonderful show for you. Normally, a lot of the times, the interviewees that I have an opportunity and really a privilege to talk to, I really don't know that well, haven't really had much of a chance to interact them, but, Katta and I have been together for quite some time, so this is an absolute privilege. So, Katta, even though I know a lot about you, can you kind of share yourself with the rest of the world?
Sure, Don, and thank you for the opportunity. Um, when you think about when I started into paranormal, I remember in fifth grade I would love reading ghost stories. So it was just, and then throughout all my childhood and so forth, I was interested in that. And then throughout my life, I've had many opportunities to learn about different intuitive arts and the things that I do. Um, and I'd say, for example, with channeling, when in 1969, when everyone was going to Woodstock, I went to Mexico for a summer session through a high university. And there I met a man who took me to his home. And there a curandero was channeling. So that was my first experience. And he explained that. And then I came to Tucson about 76. In 1980, I met a local tarot teacher. So I've been reading tarot and teaching classes since then. And I've taken a mediumship training class with Mavis Patilla, a famous medium from the Arthur Findlay School of Mediumship in Britain, and a training session with an evidentiary medium called Suzanne Giesman. And along the way, I learned some numerology from a local teacher, and I've just kind of checked out ribbon reading and numerology. I've been to several dowsing conferences, and I attend the monthly speakers meetings online for the Tucson Dowsers. So I'm a lifelong learner, so I like all that, all those things.
Yeah,
And I've also
I'm right there. Go ahead.
With my spiritual teacher of almost 40 years, we would go out and go on retreats in Sedona and so forth, and we would do UFO hunts. We've done a lot of clearing of energies with house cleansings, where there may be some sort of entity or perhaps ghost. So, yeah, I've been involved in this for a long, long time.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you like ghost stories from an early age. I've actually asked that question of interviewees that we've had on the show in the past. When did you get involved? And the surprising thing, but I guess now in retrospect, not so surprising, they all said some version of exactly what you said. I was fascinated by the Loch Ness Monster when I was 5. I loved Bigfoot when I was 6. And there was this almost lifetime curiosity to the paranormal, and it, again, not limited to any one particular type of paranormal. It's just kind of uniformly throughout, this entire paranormal world. So we share that. So when you say intuitive arts, can you share with our listeners you kind of touched on them kind of conversationally, but, channeling and tarot and numerology and other things like that. Are there other intuitive arts that, they may be aware of and maybe not even know that they're classified like that?
Yes, there are. And I'd like to kind of give a little bit of history of intuitive arts because if it's nothing new, way back almost 3,000 years ago, the Chinese developed the I Ching. And then in the Greco-Roman period, people would go to the Sibyls, the female oracles who were believed to be able to divine the future. And then astrology started in the Babylonian times, perhaps, maybe before that. And then tarot supposedly began in like 15th century Europe. So all of these things have been around for a long time with a quest to understand what's happening in our lives and what is coming up in our lives. So you might say these actually call on our intuition to help us to tap into our own inner wisdom, or which we can use for ourselves or others. But when you think of it, there's intuitive arts, and people talk about divination. So divination, what do you think divination is? What does that mean to you?
Well, anytime I've ever heard that, it was kind of some version of telling the future, or understanding something that's going to be coming up. I don't know if that's right, but that's kind of always the way that I looked at it.
Yeah, divining what's going to happen or what is happening. And so intuitive arts are a method for divination. And in fact, one of the common or reoccurring intuitive arts is dowsing. And when now I'm going to say maybe a century or so ago, the people who would find water where it was needed, they were called water witches or diviners. So they used usually a forked stick to find the water. But there are probably, so with all the intuitive arts used to divine, there's many different tools. There's probably like 100 or so, but a few that I want to talk about. One is automatic writing, and that is the simplest one that anyone can do every day. Just tuning in, sitting down with a piece of paper, notebook, and a pen or pencil, and getting centered in some way. And for example, I saw this guy on YouTube that I really like. The prompt to get him going is, what does my soul want me to know today? And then he just lets it flow, and whatever comes up. And so then over the days and over the months, he can see if there's a pattern or if there's something there. So that's called automatic writing. And then there's something called. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so again, because I try to be the voice of the listener in a lot of the conversations. So in automatic writing, so I am familiar with it conceptually, but does something possess your body to operate your hand? Is it something that it just kind of, flows to you almost unconsciously, and you write it? Because normally when I think of automatic writing, I think in ghost investigations where you would have a medium and again, paper, pencil, they would kind of go into a trance or make themselves open, and then whatever entity was there then would use that as an ability to communicate, but they would either have to imprint something in there or physically control their hand. So is it just kind of a feeling, or is it some kind of, does something actually move your hand, in your opinion? I mean, obviously I understand there's no hard and fast rule,
in a way,
in your opinion.
It's kind of a form of channeling. It's like our intuition is perhaps where there's this hidden knowledge in our subconscious. So that's why it's important to get centered, maybe take a few deep breaths and just allow and set the intention that whatever you need to know will come to you. And then it's different for each person. And there may be even some people who will type it on the keyboard. I prefer writing by hand. So it's the kind of thing that a person will develop. And I believe with all of these tools, you set kind of an agreement with that tool that it's going to help you and give you that information. That's why having like a prompt like that, what does my soul want me to know today, is helpful. It's kind of like an intention for the flow to come. Now,
that's a very positive spin on it.
It's called cartomancy. Now, mancy means divination. You want to take a guess about what cartomancy is?
Writing, cartography, like calligraphy type of thing, but cartography, map making. I think cartography is map making.
Now I can see I can see exactly how you came up with that, but actually it's using cards. So tarot cards, oracle cards, angel cards, any type of cards that you might use for divination. Even some people are even able to read regular playing cards. And generally, especially with tarot and oracle cards and so forth, there's a picture and then some writing on it. And both the picture and the symbols that are in there, the picture, and sometimes also the writing are what stimulate the understanding in order to give a reading. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I just thought I'd go through a few other intuitive arts. Is that okay?
No, please, no. This is fascinating. No, I want to make sure we give a full explanation, just so that everyone understands that this is a very, very broad offering. It isn't limited to just one or two simple things. There's lots of different venues that it can take.
Exactly. So now, when you look at channeling and mediumship, I did go to the training for mediumship with that famous medium, and she explained, well, there's like a psychic reading. A psychic will pick up on their intuition and whatever psychic abilities or sixth sense abilities they have. A medium will, in particular, tune into someone who's died. Now, with the people that I co-wrote The Big Picture of Life, which is Dr. Gary Schwartz in the Consciousness Lab at the University of Arizona, and Mark Pitstick of the Soulproof organization, they call them non-material persons because they no longer have a body. So a medium will connect with the non-material person and is a go-between between the live person who's looking for information and the non-material person who is in their essence is in the afterlife or after death or non-material world, as they would call it. That's different than channeling. And I've had lots of experience. I mentioned my teacher before. One time she was channeling, and whatever message came through was that I needed to check out a little spot right next to my nose. And okay, I trust her and trust what came through. So I went to a dermatologist, and sure enough, I had a basal cell carcinoma there that I would never have known about. And of course, when I told the dermatologist that my psychic told me that, he didn't say a word.
Well, no comment. I would have, yeah. Well, and I think that's the interesting thing is that so many people believe it, but are reluctant to give credence to it. I mean, I could imagine he would see himself as a doctor, as a man of science, and that anything like that would diminish his scientific posture. But yet so much of science is unknown. And I consider myself a healthy skeptic, but I think that we're moving in that direction now, where science and doctors and other and just people that would consider themselves not really paranormally tilted are now realizing that these things are real and they're true and they can have an incredible influence on health and overall well-being and all of those things. So I think it's just a matter of time before the medical community recognizes at a much, much, much higher level the value of this.
Yes, and I just finished writing a blog about the intersectionality of spirituality and science, like with all the quantum information that's coming up, and also the intersectionality of spirituality and psychology. And in fact, there are even some psychologists and psychotherapists who are using tarot and others looking at those symbols perhaps as archetypes that help the people that they're working with. So there is definitely that connection starting to come out, I think, because now that we're in the age of Aquarius, things are turning into a different understanding of the world. So then I would...
also a higher level of acceptance I think that there is this new, new spiritualism, I guess, if you want to call it that. There's this a higher degree of acceptance across the board for recognition of the paranormal and such like that. But I'm looking forward to reading the blogs.
Yes, and in fact, I also wrote one on intuitive arts, so it's got more of the same information. But I think I mentioned that when I was researching for this, I was looking up how on AI, how many different types of divination are there, and well, I said, give me 100 different types of divination, and there were 100 and probably more. So in all the cultures over all the ages, people have found ways to tune in and use their sixth sense or their intuition to understand all of these things. And going back to the question you asked about when I first learned, um, one of the things, one of the classes that I really like to teach is for psychic kids, um, which is which is if we can go back to our childhood when we started being interested in these things and perhaps having different experiences that we couldn't understand. And I'm a retired school counselor, so I've worked with children a lot, and trying to help them when something comes up that they're very sensitive, to help them to understand that that's okay. I'll go back to my teacher of many years. That's Mary Ellen Burnett from Inner Wisdom. She talked about when she was in high school in gym class, and that the class was supposed to climb a rope, pull themselves up on a rope, and she insisted to the teacher she was going to do it. So the next person that went up, went up, and the rope fell, and the girl was hurt. And there were many other occasions she knew things. And so she remembers she got off the bus one time, and people were calling her witchy poo, and they wanted to throw stones at her. So that's why this class I call it for children with a super sensitive sixth sense, is so important, so that when young people have these types of intuitions and psychic phenomena or psychic understanding, that they have some support where even how to use those gifts in a good way. So now another intuitive art I like is numerology, and I actually have a computer program that calculates everything. But I like the way that it's actually numerology is the vibration. It's all about the vibrations of different numbers and letters, because the letters are assigned different numbers. And it's just like in music, there's vibrations. So that's why I think it's apparent that music and math are so closely related, but it all has to do with the vibrations of something or another. So in numerology, we look at the numbers for a person's name or their birth date or their address or their the name of their business or the name of their child, and we can look at the vibrational influences that can come from that. Um, and again, I learned that from a local teacher called Patricia Kirkman, and she's written books on numerology and so forth.
Well, I think numerology has numerology kind of been in our, in our lexicon for the long. My brother, right? His lucky number is 28. He found that, important things in his life connected, whether it's, the day that he met his wife, there were so many situations that occurred around 28. When he would gamble, he would use 28, and then, probably lost as many times as he won. But, I think everybody has that, that idea of, their lucky number, or, they have the rabbit's foot in their pocket and they see that was lucky for you, but clearly not lucky for the rabbit. So that, that idea of luck or having an influence of the future, I think that is, I think that's been around for a long time. I think maybe downplayed, because again, everybody has their lucky number or their, lucky charm or something like that they hope will influence the future. Do you think it's now kind of moving from the realm of just kind of this random kind of a quirky, silly, kind of, funny thing to be, much more legitimate and much more like numerology? I know people will look at the addresses on new homes that they're interested in buying to try to determine if that combination of numbers is positive. So do you think it's becoming more effectual now?
Well, I think all of the intuitive arts, like I mentioned, tarot being used in psychology, astrology being used for investing, and there's just so much more awareness of all of these arts and how they basically, I think, they're based on the idea of intention. So no matter what intuitive art you use, you set the intention to get knowledge and understanding and guidance and so forth. Um, and whether it's tarot or numerology or astrology, it's all just a different way to get to something, the way you can understand things. Of course, now dowsing can also be used particularly to find things that are hidden. People use numerology for finding oil and gas and gold and other minerals and so forth. But I'd like to talk just a moment about how I use the tarot and how it's evolved for me to really being an intuitive art. So
Absolutely. No, yes, please, please.
so when a reader, a tarot reader, gives a reading to somebody, there's two parts to it. One is the location in the spread or layout, and the other is the specific meaning of the card that is put into each position. So, so it's kind of a combination of both of them. But what I have found over the years, I use pretty much the same layout to begin with for general reading, and I look at, health, wealth, uh, learning, family, friends, career, all those kinds of things that most people want to know about. So let's say I'm doing a reading and I'm looking at something about friends in that general reading. I may have one card show up in a reading for one person, and in that reading, that one particular card will come through to me. It's kind of like a channeling kind of thing. It just comes through that in this reading, that card means this thing. Now I could do another reading for another person and have the same card show up in the same place in the layout or spread. And what comes to me is something different than what I read for the other person. That's where the sixth sense or the intuition comes in. Now, that's not how I started, though. When I first started reading, I was I'm going to say more scientific because I read the book and this is what the card means and what the symbols are and this is, how you interpret it and so forth. So I began with that foundation for general understanding. But now over the decades, I allow my intuition to speak to me. And regardless of what another person might say it means or the book says it means, I just go with what comes in through my intuition. And that's why and again, it's an intuitive art. When you get to that point where you're trusting what comes through, the tarot cards are just a tool. They're just a means to get there.
Well, and I think that so many I think there's a misunderstanding that's out there. Yeah, I think the randomness of the cards are in fact not random at all. I think my feeling is that there's some kind of divine hand that puts the cards in a particular order. So based on the spread pattern that you're using, it's going to communicate a particular message to you. Now, again, that may seem very random, but then if you believe in the influence of a divine influence or just, whatever is manipulating the world, that it's not random at all, that divine influence put that card into that location based on the pattern that it knows you were going to use. Is that a fair statement?
Definitely. And in fact, that's what I talked about, having that relationship with your tool. Now, me as a Christian, when I give a reading to somebody, I say, let me see what I need to see in the name of Jesus Christ. So I do add that divine touch. Not everyone approaches tarot that way. And there's some people who are very much against it. There's a funny story when I was teaching tarot long time ago through Pima College, their non-credit class. Um, I was all set to teach a 4-week tarot class like I usually do, but they scheduled me to have it at South Point High School, a Catholic high school. And so someone did call into Pima College and say, "Why are you having a tarot class at a Catholic school, high school?" And I was wondering, I was worried that someone was going to show up and protest, but that didn't happen. But um, and I remember my mother, when she was alive, asking, "Well, you know, people at my church tell me that's the devil and this and that." And um, I believe in the gifts of the spirit. And so if you approach it that way, yes. Now, there's also been, over history, the person who says, "Well, cross my palm with silver and I'll tell you your future." And then they also add on, "Well, if you don't do this, if you don't do what I say, you're going to have a curse. And I need more money for this and that." So certainly, of the soothsayers, there are the diviners. There are a lot of bad actors too, but it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be
unfortunately,
that way.
yeah, unfortunately, like anything, people can take the best, the best of intentions of something and coerce it. So, I always say this. It seems like there's always more conversation than there is time, and we're literally, pushed against a hard break here at 10:30. But kind of in a few minutes. First of all, can you share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you and kind of what you do? So, how would somebody hire you? How would they reach you? What can you do for them?
Okay, well, I don't have a website. I just have my email address, which is Katta, Katta dot Mapes, Mapes, that rhymes with grapes, at gmail.com. Katta.mapes at gmail.com. I am a, a, a master's level counselor, but I also do what I call intuitive life coaching. So someone can contact me through my email, and I will send them a menu of all the services that I have. We intuitive arts. I also I've written books on emotional intelligence. I do things for teaching soft skills in the workplace. I teach English to non-English speakers and basic Spanish. So I have a whole gamut of things that I can help people with personally and in their business as well.
Right. And if you'd like to get a hold of Kata, and you could always reach out to us here at the Tucson Paranormal Society. We are very happy to connect you up. So, Kata, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I'm constantly fascinated by this, certainly by you as well, because, not being a practitioner and not really being paranormal until that's a Mrs. Zavis thing. I'm constantly amazed by the things that I'm now learning. So thank you so much. It was a privilege to have you join us. We really do appreciate that. For those that are listening, you're always welcome to connect up with us. TucsonParanormalSociety.com is probably one of the best ways. It certainly has all of the contact information, phone numbers, emails, every way that you can get a hold of us. We're happy if you've got an investigation being needed, if you want to come to one of our events. Please, that's kind of the way. Follow us certainly on Facebook if you get a chance. TucsonParanormalSociety.com. Always great information on that. We're developing a YouTube channel for Tucson Paranormal Society as well, so there'll be some great stuff on that. So, Kata, thank you so much on behalf of myself and obviously all of our listeners. It was an absolute privilege. And for those that are joining us again, we the only reason we're able to do this is because people listen. So, thank you so much. So, Kata, thank you very much, and hopefully you had a good time doing it.
I sure did. Thank you, Don. You're a great host.
Well, I have my moments. You caught me in a good one. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and keep Tucson spooky, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.